Hey now, good morning, PASW staff, clients, and friends. Joining us for Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. I'm still very blown away and touched by that last movement from Mahler's 8th Symphony. Thanks for listening to that. I know that was a long thing to listen to, but I think it made us better listeners, better people, better human beings, all that stuff. And we talked about how the symphony is a metaphor for life. There's different movements, there's beginning, middle, and ends, all that kind of stuff. So that was heavy. That's why we're going to kick it cool today, a cool samba feel today. But then also your film scoring results are in for Gladiator. So I can't wait to share that with you on Friday. So yeah, we're going to kick it fun and cool. It's going to be fun for the whole family. I want to give it a shout out to my brother Sebastian. He really got me into this guy's music a lot. And we're going to talk about a guy in his group mostly, and it's just going to be a very sexy, fun day. So today we're going to look at Sergio Mendes and Brasil 66. Why 66? Well, they came out with their album in 1966, so that's why it's called Sergio Mendes and Brasil 66, the band. Why Brazil? Because we've looked at bossa nova music before, and samba music, bossa nova music, this stuff comes from Brazil, from Rio de Janeiro. So let's leave Hollywood. I don't like to, but I will for this class, and we can go down to Rio de Janeiro, which is way down there. Because we did a whole class on bossa nova, if you remember. Before we get into Sergio and the group, bossa nova, we did that. It starts in the late 50s, and it's kind of this combination of samba music, which is a Brazilian dance type music, and cool jazz. Yeah, let's bring up the timeline right now, just so you can see. I put Miles Davis there because Miles Davis is probably the easiest example of us to learn about we've learned about cool jazz through Miles Davis and how innovative he was with what album that came out in 1959, Kind of Blue, right? That was the peak of really the height of cool jazz. Bossa Nova comes on the scene around 1957. Now, if we go back to the timeline, I feel like a weather person, but if we go back to the timeline, let's look at another composer who's a Brazilian composer who was before. Do you remember Villa-Lobos? So it's interesting that he dies in 1957, pretty much the year before or the same year as bossa nova is starting. He lives a long life, but he's a classical composer, right? But he's using Brazilian music as a way, and Debussy and this combination of different music to create Brazilian classical music, perhaps. Jobim, Antonio Carlos Jobim, is probably known as the father of bossa nova. He wrote Bonnie's favorite song, and mine. He wrote "Girl from Ipanema."
And young and lovely, the girl from Ipanema goes walking, and when she passes, he smiles, but she doesn't see.
Comes out in 1962. So the United States is flooded now with this new form of bossa nova music. They're loving every minute of it. Okay, so Jobim was very influenced by Villa-Lobos' music. Maybe there's some similarities, sure, with feel and rhythm. Yeah, but what Brazil '66 and Sergio Mendes is going to do, along with Herb Alpert, these guys are coming in the late '50s and the '60s, and they're going to really use this kind of Brazilian music in a popular sense. Sergio Mendes is born in 1941. He's still alive. He's 80 years old. Brazilian musician and has had over 55 releases. And there's jazz and there's funk and there's samba and all this stuff. But he was born in Brazil and the son of a physician, and wanted to become a classical pianist, really. And then he started falling in love with jazz and playing in nightclubs in the Copacabana in the 1950s, and started playing with Jobim, who he regarded as really his mentor, his music mentor, and other jazz musicians that started coming down to Brazil. A lot of jazz guys came down to Brazil, including one we're going to talk about at some point. We're going to talk about Cannonball Adderley. He was very influential in recognizing Brazilian music as a jazz musician and kind of bringing it in. It's funny because this kind of samba, bossa nova, Brazilian music, there's elements of jazz and pop music, so only with a Latin feel. I mean, we're breaking it down for the easiest possible way for us to understand and enjoy this music.
You are the one, only you beneath the moon and under the sun. Whether near to me or far, it's no matter, darling, where you are, I think of you.
So in 1962, he travels. Sergio Mendes goes to New York, okay, and he premieres at the Birdland, which was probably the most famous jazz club around at that time, named after Charlie Parker, of course, because Charlie Bird Parker, that was him. He meets Cannonball, and that leads to his appearance with Cannonball on 1962 album called Quiet Nights. And he also performs a bossa nova concert at Carnegie Hall in 1962. So that's a big year and then America starts taking note of these performances, and Brazilian music is coming in at a great time right now for people it's almost great because cool jazz is fine, then it gets into free jazz, people are losing interest. Rock and roll is fine, then it gets into the Beatles, and then people are really becoming interested with the British invasion in the 60s. But bossa nova, jazz, pop music is really something the kids are really loving, but probably the adults are really loving too, because it's, I don't want to say safe music, but it's different than crazy jazz and different than crazy rock and roll. It's very, but it's still hip, so they're feeling comfortable with that.
Day after day, alone on a hill, the man with the foolish grin is keeping perfectly still. But nobody wants to know him, they can see that he's just a fool, and he never gives an answer, but the fool on the hill sees the sun going down, and the eyes in his head see the world spinning round.
That's why, people call it elevator music or easy listening music. And we did a whole class on Herb Alpert. So Herb Alpert finds these guys and signs them with A&M Records, Albert and Moss. Remember we did that. And it comes out with Herb Alpert presents Sergio Mendes in Brazil 66 in the year 1966. What happened in 1966? Nothing happened that year, actually. Let's just go through the history just so we know, okay, so this Brazilian sound's coming up on the scene. What is going on in the world and in America when this Brazilian sound comes out on the scene? Star Trek, for the first time, science fiction television has Star Trek, and also the same year Batman, with Adam West debuts. Okay, fashion-wise, what are people really wearing? Well, it's not. I don't want to be sexist, but I mean, what's really taken over is the miniskirt in 1966. Miniskirts are in fashion, and this is based on research. This isn't just me finding different clothes. But the name miniskirt is attributed, I didn't know, to Mary Quaint. Mary Quaint was popularized. She also popularized hot pants. Okay, but in 1955, Mary Quaint opens a clothes shop in London, in Chelsea, and the miniskirts are starting to take off. So if you have the fashion, the look, the music, there's going to be a change coming, right? Something's going to happen. What about music-wise? Simon and Garfunkel releases their Sounds of Silence album. This is different than heavy rock and roll. This is going to be more folk music, some classical elements too. And movies, what comes out in 66? Dr. Zhivago, huge epic movie comes out. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf comes out. That's an epic Mike Nichols film, very dramatic, great film. And A Man for All Seasons, which wins the Academy Award. Big songs, I mean, there's too many to name because it's going to take me forever to edit this sentence. I'm a Believer by the Monkees is very popular. Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys. I mean, this is on the radio all the time. Monday, Monday, Mamas and Papas. And then the 3-chord song Wild Thing is very popular. So that's the scene that's happening here in America, but also in the world, because London, Britain is also very responsible for a lot of the fashion and stuff too. Fashion and music always go together, even today. I mean, you don't turn on The Voice without seeing somebody dressed in the way that they're presenting the song. So that's kind of why the miniskirt connection is there, because it is about the image a lot. So when they come out with this album, probably the biggest song that everyone knows is Mas Que Nada.
Mas que nada, sai da minha frente que eu quero passar, pois o samba está animado, o que eu quero é samba. Este samba que é misto de maracatu, é samba de preto veio, samba de preto.
Mendes said that this was the first time that a song in Portuguese, because that's what they're singing, they're not singing in Spanish, they're singing in Portuguese. It was the first time that a Portuguese was a hit in America and all over the world. So the whole world fell in love with this song, this language, just the whole image of the band. Mas Que Nada was written by Jorge Ben. The translations roughly for Mas Que Nada is roughly kind of yeah, right, or no way. One of those translations. So kind of, but everyone's heard that. Everyone heard it in Austin Powers. It's a really fun song. And if you notice, yes, there's words in it, but something that Brazilian music does really well, and bossa nova music does really well, something that is that they'll use their voices as instruments. Not everything that comes out of their mouth is a word. Sometimes it's a vowel, sometimes it's a pow, pow, ow. It sounds. It's musical. It's all musical. It makes it all part of the. So you can do the ahs and the wows and all these different sounds, just like Esquivel's music. You hear a lot of that too. People, I don't want to say like American music didn't really do that as much. We did, but I think other cultures, other different types of music, especially in Brazil and Mexico, even in Europe, I mean, they were just using different kinds of ways to make sounds with their voices to add to the harmony, add to the texture of the song, to make it just more interesting. I mean, how fun is this music?
Just as paradise population too. I know together we can make a pretty world for me and for you, for you. It's what I long to do, to make a world with you.
They covered a lot of people on this, I mean, and moving on from just this album, they Burt Bacharach songs. We looked at Burt Bacharach and how he used jazz elements in popular music. We've looked at the Beatles, obviously. They covered the Beatles in a way that was way different than just doing a cover of the Beatles. Because what are we hearing? we're hearing Latin music for the most part that's the rhythms aren't swung. So what do I mean by that? We talked about Glenn Miller and Count Basie. That's swing music. What is swing? We've talked about swing mostly, and forgive me for sounding, silly, but mostly it's da da do da do da do da do da do da do da do. That's a dotted 8/16. That's the swing. Latin is not like that. Brazilian is not like that. It's da 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 da. We've talked a little bit about the feel of it, so that's what we're hearing. So we're not listening. This doesn't sound anything. The whole feel of this kind of music is nothing like swing music. In a sense, it's somewhat like jazz music, but I think the cool jazz part is because of the instrumentation. The drums, the brushes, the cymbals, the piano, the bass, the drums. That is part of cool jazz, but they're not swinging it really. That's not how they play the song. They're more straight eighth notes. So there's swung eighth notes, and then there's straight eighth notes. So those, rhythmically, that's what we're talking about. I just want you guys to be clear about the style that we're talking about. That's the feeling of it. It doesn't matter. There's either good music or bad music, right? But I just want you to know kind of what we're hearing about it. Harmonically, they're following jazz chords a lot. But they're making it like Herb Alpert did. They're making it very popular sounding. I think that's why people loved it so much, because it was very melodic and very fun music, very vibrant, very happy music. When you think about that, I think, and that's the success of it. I mean, it's really extremely happy music that's hard not to really, if you don't love it, it's hard not to kind of want to dance and enjoy it. So that's Sergio Mendes in Brazil 66. Thought we'd have a cool bossa nova midweek class. And tomorrow we're going to look at something in LA that I have something special for you planned. Hope you enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun. And thanks, Sebastian, for sharing all those wonderful pieces with me. And yeah, I think I've said it all. So I hope you enjoyed that. And I will see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.